We're here on Coffee and Culture. My name is Matthew Chase Daniel, and I'm talking today with Jamison Chase Banks. We're on Talk 1260 and 103.7 KTRC, streaming at santafe.com. And Jamison, I never know whether to call you Jamison or Chase.
I think either one. Yeah.
Different people do different things.
Different people do, yeah. My family and friends, kind of close friends and family, know me as Chase because that's just my nickname I had as a kid.
Yeah.
But as I've gotten older, I've used Jamison because it just sounds more legal.
It's a good name. And Chase, I have a particular affinity for that since that's my name.
It has a ring.
Yeah. But I do have trouble when I'm typing on the computer and I try and put that line over the A. I can never figure it out. So I have to Google your name, find a website that has your name with the line over it, and then copy it and paste it and change the font.
I'm sorry to make you work.
It's tough work, but it's okay. So
just the email next time.
Yeah. Anyway, Jamison is the second in a series of George O'Keeffe Axel Contemporary Mobile Artist in Residence. And so last year it was Brian Fleetwood, who we had a great time working with. And this year it's Jamison. And he's been working on a project since maybe last summer.
Yeah, we started actually in March, even before it was officially granted to us, but we knew we were going to get it. So we kind of started a little bit early, and we were just able to get off on the right foot doing that.
Yeah. And the way the program works, so a few years ago, the George O'Keeffe Museum started a program with a mobile art space, more of a workshop than a workspace, more than a gallery like Axel. And so we all got together and decided that the artists would work with the O'Keeffe Museum and their resources and their truck and do a project, and then it would at the end of it there would be a project in Axel, sort of a culmination of the project and educational stuff. And so we're going to be doing a show of Jamison's work, and he's working with a Nimke wild white eagle, and it's called Species Pending, and it's based so a lot so there's a fossil, many hundreds or thousands of fossils found up at Ghost Ranch near where George O'Keeffe used to live, and it's a proto-dinosaur.
It's a proto-dinosaur.
And it's named after George O'Keeffe.
Precisely, yeah. And also Ghost Ranch, because the name is Ephegia O'Keeffeia. So Ephegia is Latin for ghost.
Oh, I see. So it's the Ghost O'Keeffe, Ghost Ranch, George O'Keeffe.
Yeah, it's a weird combination, but I think it's emblematic of Ghost Ranch and then her.
Right. And that's, so these fossils are found there? Are they found other places too, this species?
I don't believe they've been found anywhere else, this exact species. I may be incorrect, but the only other closest relative to what this animal was found in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be related to Coelophysis, which is the state fossil. And they're all kind of in this group of proto-dinosaurs.
Coelophysis is the state fossil of New Mexico?
Of New Mexico,
uh-huh.
Yeah. And that's also found at Ghost Ranch only.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And you know a lot about dinosaurs.
I do now, yeah.
As a kid, you were...
I knew stuff, but I didn't know, the real legitimate stuff,
Yeah.
The data behind it, or even the time frames.
The time frames, I have trouble, and I think a lot of people do, conceptualizing, because you're like, okay, Benjamin Franklin, that was, 200 or 300 years ago, a couple hundred years ago.
Yeah.
And then, Jesus Christ and the Roman Empire, that was a couple thousand years ago, and ancient Greece was 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. And then it gets kind of fuzzy, and dinosaurs like this guy lived how long, millions of years ago?
200 million years ago.
Right. So what is 200 million compared to Ben Franklin? It's like Ben Franklin happened 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, no, it is. And, I did a paleontology dig at Ghost Ranch this summer, me and Nimkiwa. And so we were working with paleontologists who are some of the best in the field, and certainly some of the best who know about these animals. And I asked them one day, how do you compress all this time and how do you make sense of it? And they actually said, well, we kind of don't either. I don't know that it's humanly possible to comprehend those lengths of time. We're talking about millions of years. Think about how many times the moon or the sun appeared during those millions of years. That kind of puts it into scope, right?
Right.
Because then we're talking about millions of more times.
Right.
But we can understand when the moon comes up, right? That's the same moon that those dinosaurs saw.
Right.
Oddly enough.
Yeah.
So we're not that detached. And then even when I go further from it, I'm like, well, these animals have 2 eyes. They have 2 nostrils. They have teeth. They had a tongue.
Right.
They
They're
have
somewhat
organs.
relatable.
Their skin encompassing it all. Nails. I mean, 2 arms, 2 legs. It's really, I got a tailbone. It's really not too much different, really.
Right.
As opposed to like something that's in the
Right.
bottom of the ocean or something.
Right. And humans weren't around at all back then.
No, not even close. I mean, the closest thing that we can consider a hominid was at the most 1 million years ago. At the most.
Right. And this area where they lived, what's now Ghost Ranch, very arid, high desert, was the shore of the...
Well, it wasn't actually a shore, but they say it was probably about 100 miles within shore.
Uh-huh.
And at this time, we're talking about the Triassic. Now, this is the beginning of the reptile, takeover. But they're all small. They're not like, Tyrannosaurus Rex like you see in Jurassic Park.
Right.
Now, Jurassic era is when those things start to really get bigger.
That was later.
Later. And then the final stage before the asteroid hit is the Cretaceous. And that's when you have the big giant brontosauruses and everything that's really big. Yeah.
It's fascinating.
It's mind-blowing.
I used to, when my kid was little, I watched Land Before Time. It was a comic cartoon.
I
You
remember
watched
that.
it? Yeah.
Chaka.
Littlefoot. Anyway. So for this, so you went on digs.
Yeah, so a friend of mine, Joanne Lafrac, who I've known for a while, recently became a director up there, and I had lunch with her one day and was just kind of happenstance talking about this idea, and she said, well, just so happens that there's actually a dinosaur up at Ghost Ranch, or dinosaurs, and I don't know if I'd heard about that, but it just clicked, and I was like, this is going to be it. If I could get these things to line up with the O'Keefe and with Ghost Ranch, and if nobody really knows about this animal, that's real estate that I can take.
Yeah.
So then I talked to the O'Keefe about it, and really no one over there knew about this. And I was kind of astonished. But that being said, this animal was only discovered in 2006, I believe.
Oh, wow. So Georgia was gone by then.
But oddly enough, when they discovered Coelophysis, they discovered thousands of them, and they cut blocks, so they'd actually have to cut through layers of them and damage some or whatever just to get the blocks out. I don't know how many blocks they had, but maybe let's say 20. Well, one went to Stanford and all the academic fields, and they just stayed in their collections for years. Well, one paleontologist, Sterling Nesbitt, who actually ended up finding this, found it in a jacket of bones that had been taken. I can't remember which school he went to, but he was working on one of these original jackets of Coelophysis. Coelophysis is littered in all these jackets, blocks. And so he was digging through it and found this different species and discovered it.
Right.
Yeah.
Just by chance. He wasn't looking
No,
for it.
yeah.
He was looking at the other thing.
You wouldn't even know the needle's there.
Right.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
It's an unknown needle.
Yeah. And fossilization happens. We have to go to break.
That was quick.
Yeah, that was 10 minutes. We'll be right back. This is Jamison Chase Banks, and I'm Matthew Chase Daniel, and we're talking about the project he's doing with the George O'Keeffe Mobile Artist in Residence and Axel Contemporary. The show at Axel opens on April 18th. We'll tell you more about that soon. You're back with Coffee and Culture. I'm Matthew Chase Daniel, talking to Jamison Chase Banks. We're sitting in his tiny little intimate studio in his backyard in Santa Fe. And before we started recording, I was telling him how I've just transitioned from a big studio to a little studio, and there's something feels good about that. I'm calling it the studito, which is stupid, but I like it.
No, I've coined it too. I like it.
So we were talking about fossils, and I was going to ask you, because you know more than me, I know a little bit. Fossils are made so an animal dies and it gets stuck in the mud and covered over by sediments, layers of mud from floods and whatever. And then somehow the body, what was the body, creates a hollow in that sediment as it rots away or decomposes. But then other minerals, there's an accretion of a different mineral source.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, you think you nailed it right there. So think of casts and molds, just like you were mentioning. And I don't think that every bone that you see, fossilized bone that you see, at least with dinosaurs, are like completely stone. I don't think it's been 100% accrued. There's still kind of pieces of bone in there, but it will make an exact replica, even with like the pores of the bones and everything. But that's why you get different colored fossils, because that accretion is going through all those different minerals and taking up bits of what's surrounding it. So if you get a red fossil, perhaps there's a lot more iron in the surrounding environment.
Right.
The stuff up in Ghost Ranch is all like nearly black. It's a really dark gray, and I don't know exactly why that is. But
and the stuff that's around it, that's just dirt, is that a different color?
It's gray. It's like a shaly kind of light gray. And imagine silt. It's like just silt building up over and over and over and over. And I think up there at Ghost Ranch, these were not just one flood event, it was multiple flood events. And you don't find anything really intact. A lot of stuff has just been jumbled up and crushed and
from the flood being washed around and all the geological processes.
So.
You're right.
There's a number of different quarries up there, and I think you get different qualities depending on the different environments.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you seen the dinosaur footprints up by Clayton?
No, but I want to go see that.
I've been there a couple times.
With the truck?
Once with I think we left the truck in town and drove a different car out. But yeah, Jerry and I did our traveling E Pluribus Unum project for Axel, and we were taking photos in Clayton for a day. And I had been there maybe 10 or 20 years earlier to the dinosaur footprints and said, you got to see this, because he had never seen it. So we drove out there. It's like, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes from town. And there's this little pond and a few trees, and it's sort of out there in the desert, and there's not a lot around. And then you walk, and there are these little walkways, and then you look down, and there's footprints. It looks like it could have happened last week. Incredible. Like a dinosaur was walking along, and it was it was wet, and there went in the mud and walked on.
Was it deep?
They're like an inch or two deep. And they're like 3 toes, and there's a bunch of different ones.
Are they round like an elephant?
No, it's like 3, and then maybe a back claw.
Something smaller than like a big giant.
There may be around. Some of them are maybe 6 or 8 inches diameter. Wow. I don't know. I can't remember. It's just it's a whole.
I mean, imagine seeing that as an ancient person, right? I think that I'll jump off on that and talk about a little bit about this project. In that's kind of the jump off point for this, is thinking about my ancestors encountering these things, and certainly it happened all across the world.
Right.
And one could even surmise that these are perhaps the foundations of myth.
Right.
Right.
And your ancestry is indigenous from
North America.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a mix of different tribes.
Right.
So, kind of like all of
right. Right. So, yeah. And a lot of your work you're looking at historical events from different viewpoints and sort of having this imaginative leap into looking at it not as some like big overarching history that we've all learned in history class, but how does it look from your ancestors' viewpoint or whatever. And it's also personal, has to do with your father and the war and your grandfather and baseball and all these different projects that I know of yours.
Absolutely.
And mixing the personal and the historical and the indigenous viewpoint and all these things. And it's a fascinating approach and maybe unusual.
Well, thank you for saying that. I mean, I think, you mentioned something, the indigenous viewpoint. I feel like in a really kind of like a closed circuit, it's like this type of work, including my family, including culture, including history, including animals, including different instances or slogans, that's an indigenous viewpoint. It's this whole encompassing view, as opposed to being like, okay, here's my family, it's in a box, I'm going to tell you about it, but it doesn't connect to anything else really. So I like to have those things intermingle, intertwined.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting way of expressing it. That the indigenous viewpoint isn't some like stereotypical think where like all is one and this, in a limited universe, all is one and the harmony with nature and stuff, all these tropes that we people express, but that it's pulling from all experience and all of history and all of knowledge. And maybe 500 years ago, that knowledge was had to do with, it didn't have to do with European history, but now it does, because there's been hundreds of years of that being part of the world, the indigenous world. And so that's as much the indigenous knowledge as, how to tan a buffalo hide or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And one could say that maybe tanning a buffalo hide is not as vital to me right now as maybe understanding European history on some levels. See, so it's like there's this exchange that occurs, but it's not saying that necessarily one thing is more important than the other.
Yeah.
It's just the topic of the day.
Yeah. So here I have an unrelated question. Cool. Maybe it's related. So you were born in Arkansas City? Is that how you pronounce that?
Arkansas is how they say it in Kansas.
Right. So this was my question, because we have Arkansas and Arkansas and Kansas, and I've never understood like how to pronounce.
Well, I think Kansas comes from the Kansas people. So I don't know where I didn't grow up in Arkansas, so I don't know. I grew up on the Arkansas River.
It was called the Arkansas, but it's spelled SAS at the end, like Arkansas.
Yeah.
City.
I mean, people in Kansas pronounce it Arkansas.
The Arkansas River?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, I don't know that. No, I don't think people say that. It's the Arkansas River.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay.
Well, it's just like
enough of that. This isn't
Midwest.
very interesting.
Yeah, no, that's
it's something that, it's like...
it's like Missouri and Missouri.
Missouri, and there's some city that's in the other...
Kansas City.
Kansas City is in Missouri.
Yeah. And Kansas, it's shared.
There's two of them.
Well, it's the same.
It's the same. It crosses. It's on either side of the river.
Yes.
What's the name of that river? Never mind. I'm joking. It's not. This isn't a test. So I think the Missouri River. Anyway, I grew up on like East Coast, New England, New York, and then I've spent time in California and here and in Europe a little bit, but not a lot in Kansas. I've driven across.
Fair enough.
I've driven across it.
No, well, people don't say to themselves, "Hey, honey, let's go to Kansas for a vacation."
Right.
That just doesn't really happen.
Well, that's probably a good thing for Kansas in a way.
Well, Kansas, it says labor. It doesn't say beaches and pleasure and relaxation. It says labor.
Right.
You look out and there's just fields of grain.
It's farming.
And it's like, that says nothing else but, labor, really.
Yeah. So do you still go back there? Do you have family there? Or?
I do, but I don't make it back very much. I injured my back some years ago, and it makes travel quite difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got to go to a break. We got a little off topic.
Yeah.
Not that there's a topic that we need to hold to,
Sorry
but
about that.
we'll be right back. That's my fault. I'm talking with Jamison Chase Banks about species pending coming up. You're back listening to our show on the radio and podcast, Coffee and Culture. It's on the radio on Saturdays and Sundays just after 2 p.m. on AM 1260 or FM 103.7. You can also stream it at that time at santafe.com, and then you can find the podcasts at my website, chasedaniel.com, or anywhere you like to get podcasts, like Spotify or Amazon or Apple or YouTube, things like that. And if you do that, look for Coffee and Culture with Matthew Chase Daniel. That's how you'll find that. I'm talking to Jamison Chase Banks. He's the second annual mobile artist in residence at George O'Keeffe Museum and Axel Contemporary. And there's his installation that he's working on with Animkewa White Eagle will be opening there'll be an opening at Axel in the rail yard shade structure by the farmers market on Friday, April 18th, 5 to 7 p.m. So come on out and check that out. There's also going to be some educational outreach things in Abiquiu, at Ghost Ranch, in the public library, and at New Mexico School for the Arts. Maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit. But sort of the centerpiece of the installation is a wood carving that you made, which is a life-size carving of this Ephigia O'Keeffea.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So when I first decided to work on this project, there was something speaking to me about older experiences that I had when I first came to Santa Fe, and I thought I was a sculptor. So I came to IA and I used to sculpt in cedar. And as I've gotten older and I injured myself, I couldn't really do that so much with time constraints. But I really wanted to get back into it and feel and challenge myself in a way that I didn't know if I could anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided to make a full-scale model of this animal. It's not quite life-size to an adult. It's almost like an adolescent. This thing would grow to about another foot longer.
Uh-huh. Is it a boy or a girl?
I don't know.
Anyway, he or it has a little adolescent feel, just posture, and
Yeah.
he's got his eyes, he's looking out, he's trucking along.
Yeah, and I imagine they did that quite a bit. I feel like, see, these guys were vegetarian. They were, they didn't eat meat, so they weren't carnivores. So they were probably getting eaten by the things that needed to run. And if you look at the design, it looks kind of roadrunner-ish, birdish.
Yeah.
So I imagine that it was a pretty good runner.
Yeah.
You know,
And it had those big back legs. And
had big back legs. I don't know if they were quite that big, but I looked at the model and, you know, I mean, this is another point. Is like, if I wanted to sculpt a bobcat, I could talk to a bobcat person. I could go to the library. I could go to the zoo and do this. You can't do that.
Right.
This is like,
Because the fossils are of the bones only.
yeah.
They're not of the skin and the fur or the feathers
So
or
you
anything.
don't really know, like, the musculature you can deduce from looking at other animals that have a similar structure.
Right.
But certainly wouldn't know ever what it looked like on the surface.
Right. They have found in some dinosaurs like remnants of feathers and
Feathers and even skin.
Uh-huh.
And from that, I was talking to a paleontologist again one day out on the dig, because we're there for all day talking and shoulder to shoulder. And I asked him about the color combinations and how would you be able to find that? And he said, well, through some of these skin fossils, we're able to look at the cellular structure of the skin. And from that, we can deduce that certain cells are pigmented a certain way because of shape.
right, because the color we see isn't a thing. There isn't
It's a
a
shape,
red
right?
thing. It's a shape, and
Right.
the way the sky
It's-
isn't blue. The
Right.
sky is clear or something.
Yeah.
And it's just the way the sunlight goes through the atmosphere and gets bent and filters
Activates
out
those.
some things. And so what we see is the blue part, but really all of it was up there.
Yeah.
And the same with when we see something red, it has to do with the shape of structure, some like crystal that appears one way.
Yeah. That's
So they can figure that out.
Well,
somewhat.
they can't figure out what colors it was but they can assign colors and then get an idea of the patterning.
Oh, I see.
So we
right.
can at least get the
So
patterning.
this was a color. This was color A, and this was more
Of
color
that
B.
specific
right.
species,
Of that
you know?
species.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you think of the whole breadth of all animals that we see now and all the different variations, and you apply that to what was probably back then as well.
Right. And there's a relationship between birds and dinosaurs, we think.
No, there is. They are dinosaurs. Birds are dinosaurs. They're the only living descendant of dinosaurs.
Right.
Yeah.
And the biggest ones are ostriches.
So that's a good point. So imagine, this thing would have probably had the biting capacity or the power of an ostrich.
Uh-huh.
That type of strength, bird strength.
They're scary.
Oh yeah, they can inflict damage for sure. I mean, they can defend against lions and stuff.
There was a farm for a while out on the way. I drive to LA a bunch to see family, and near Holbrook, I guess, Arizona, on the I-40. And they had a little farm, and you could go buy an ostrich egg and go buy a little bit of grain and go feed the ostriches. And I'd love to stop there just to look at them because they're amazing.
What do you do with the egg? You gonna raise it? You gonna eat it?
You can, I guess, make a big fried egg.
I'd like to have a go at that.
Yeah. I didn't do that because it grossed me out.
What? What's the difference? Oh, because you don't eat chicken, right?
Well, I eat eggs occasionally, but I don't love eating eggs. But an ostrich, like a fried egg that's like 2 feet across.
A pizza?
I don't know. You should do it, but I don't think they raise them there anymore. You'll have to find
have some red chili, man.
Another place to do it. Yeah, huevos rancheros for a large family.
That's an art piece.
With one egg.
That is.
What I did is I cut it in half. And then I filled the halves with plaster and made it so it could hang on the wall. So it's a little boob sticking out of the wall. And it was related to boobs, and I don't know. It wasn't a fully realized sculpture. It didn't fly. Just like the ostriches. They don't fly. But they're amazing animals.
Oh. Well, I mean, that's the thing.
To a hummingbird, which is amazing in an opposite way.
To my son the other day, I was like, think of the variation between that, and then think that's probably the type of variations that existed also in dinosaurs. Just that broad, living lifestyle differences.
Right.
It's so fascinating. I mean, it's like we're surrounded by miracles.
Yeah.
Right? All the time, and we just don't really see them as miracles because it's so happenstance.
Yeah.
It really is miraculous.
Beautiful butterfly that just came in and flew out.
Plant that grows. It's like I don't know if I'm going to regret this, but I planted my garden the other day, hoping that it won't freeze. But I have some fabric I can put over it. But I'm just anxious. I love to see things grow.
Coming over here, I rode my bike past Lowe's, and they have all the bedding plants out front, looking all green and lush and delicious. And it's like, it's that time of year.
That reminds me, I got to get over there and get some.
Yeah, they got a lot. And there's no other scale models, sculptures of this dinosaur?
There are. And so, when I first started, I went to Ghost Ranch to their diorama, and they have an effigy model there. Joanne didn't know who had made it because I believe it's really old. But I took that as the gospel. I thought, okay, this is in the place where they found it. This has to be accurate. So I went up there, I did drawings, and I even started carving this model based on that one. And then Paleo Week came, and I was talking to the paleontologists, and they're like, oh no, that's way inaccurate. So the inaccuracies were that the neck comes, and I'm not saying this to, bash the artist that did that, because it's a great model, and for the time, I'm sure it was probably the most accurate. But the neck exits from the bottom of the neck. That's more, humanoid, upright animal. The occipital exit came out the back.
I see.
So more like this.
Right.
More like a bird.
Right.
And then it was too skinny. So that's why I made the legs beefy, because its legs were really quite thin, and it didn't seem like it could power itself.
Yeah.
And it was also thin in the torso. So they mentioned it was kind of emaciated looking. So I kept thinking about that the whole time I was carving it, not intentionally not wanting to take too much away.
Right.
Wanting to keep it kind of a robust little creature. You know?
Well, and those legs and feet are beautiful, and you sense that power in them. Just the curve and the articulation from the hip to the knee to the ankle.
And so, it's interesting that you point that out because this drawing is all I was going on. So that's great for the side view.
Right.
But what happens when you need to start carving like this?
Right.
So when that happened, I went to Sterling Nesbitt's findings in his research and found pictures of the fossilized feet and what they actually looked like. So from that, I could make
those feet
exactly right.
Yeah, that's amazing. We got to go to our last break. We'll be back for our last 10 minutes with Jamison Chase Banks. So in between, we're talking about something else, and I want to recap a little bit. So you were saying that some geneticists have put a little woolly mammoth DNA into a mouse and made a woolly mouse.
Yeah, so a lady that works at the O'Keefe pointed this out to me, Molly, that they put the genes for the woolly mammoth fur in mice, and now the mice are woolly, like an orange woolly mouse.
So they could take some of that woolly mammoth DNA or mastodon DNA and put it into an elephant.
I believe so.
And then get an offspring that's maybe half elephant, half woolly mammoth at some point.
Theoretically. And then if all things go right with that, mate that offspring with another set and then get a 3/4.
Right.
And then if all things go right with that, mate with another one and then have
7/8
nearly complete
7/8, 15, 16.
Maybe even less, yeah.
Right. Blood quantum.
Right. Blood quantum.
So blood quantum is, you were saying, I know all about this because I'm native.
Yeah.
So blood quantum is different groups, indigenous groups around North America have different rules about what it is to be a member of the tribe, of the nation. And some of them are blood quantum, not all of them.
True.
And they're different amounts. Like if you're more than 50%, you get to be part of the tribe, and if you're less, you don't.
Yeah.
Or
Right.
7/8 or whatever it is.
If you're half mammoth, if you're more than half mammoth, you can stay.
So we're working up to start the mammoth tribe.
Hey, I'm joining for sure.
Yeah. Jurassic Park or something. I don't know. It's weird. World.
I don't know. Well, again, we were talking about someone serving some of the deceased 1,000,000 or 100,000-year-old meat, and
Right, that they found frozen in Alaska.
I wouldn't do that, but if we have the new ones,
But you'll eat an ostrich egg.
no, I won't eat the decaying meat.
It wasn't decaying. It was flash frozen.
It's.
You think it's a little dry, a freezer burn?
It didn't just fall in the ground and freeze instantly. Probably it may have sat around for a bit, even back then, right? Or
Maybe.
it may have thawed.
Yeah.
There might have been some thawing.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a little bit out of my control.
Well, I'm a vegetarian, so I'm not eating it either. But I'm not eating an ostrich egg either.
I'm saying that if it comes on the menu once it's new,
Yeah.
and living, maybe I'll have a go.
Yeah. Okay.
Just kidding.
No. It's and it raises all these sort of moral questions too.
Definitely
And I don't.
does. Do we eat it?
Right? Do we bring it back? Or there's that like dog-like marsupial from the tiger dog thing.
Like a dingo?
It's an Australian
Oh,
thing that went
yeah.
extinct in like the 1920s.
I don't know what that's called.
But they sell it thylacine.
Like an X? Is there an X in there?
I thought it was a thylacine. Anyway, whatever.
You're right. It's that.
But they could theoretically maybe bring that back. But
They haven't?
I don't think so. No.
Well, that's probably even easier because we saw that.
Right. That's not that long ago.
Yeah.
Or that's how Jurassic Park, they got the DNA out of
But with Jurassic Park,
mosquitoes in amber.
but how would you get dinosaurs from a mosquito?
Because the mosquito bites
had
the
blood in it?
dinosaur.
That's right.
And it has the blood.
That's hard to believe a mosquito could bite through a dinosaur.
Yeah, you'd think they'd have thicker skin.
Or a giant mosquito, maybe.
Maybe it was a little big mosquito and
But
a little
here's the
dinosaur.
thing. Here's the thing is that I guess that solves it because I was like, there's no DNA for the dinosaur to do Jurassic Park. It's all stone,
Right.
right?
And DNA doesn't last in stone.
No.
Right. Right. Well, that's the whole premise, was that the mosquito
I get it.
got stuck in some pine sap and became amber, and it
But
all
that would only be like one species, right? It
yeah.
wouldn't be a mix of like every one of them.
Well, I have to watch the movie. I think maybe there were a bunch of mosquitoes.
We're going on a tangent.
Anyway, so also you're making this zine with, and this is part of the George O'Keeffe Mobile Artisans Residence, is a project with this place in Albuquerque called Risolana, and they do risographs with artists. And I think anyone can go down there and hire them to make risographs. And a risograph is like this sort of outdated copy machine from the 70s that in the last decade or so people have found these old machines and repurposed them and put in different colored inks and to make
I think it always worked with the different drums. So you have all these different colors that you can, in a sense, make layers of photocopies with. So you can get, kind of like really detailed imagery that has a certain feel to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with my project, and I believe they're going to farm this out to every artist in residence, it doesn't have to do with the current project. They actually kind of considered it to be its own piece of art.
Mm-hmm.
So I took that and I started thinking about George O'Keeffe's bomb shelter because I took a tour out there with you.
I was there,
I know. And
this is her house, not in Ghost Ranch, but her house in Abiquiu in town, I think.
no, this was the one out, wasn't it?
Out in Abiquiu town. No. The bomb shelter was in
Was that Ghost Ranch? No?
sorry.
I can't remember. I actually
don't
get
think
them mixed
so.
up.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure the bomb shelter, because I can see right there, you can look down and see the highway going by.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I start conflating them because we went the
Yeah,
same
we were the
exact
same day, so yeah, the memories are all mixed together.
Totally. But that being said, I really started thinking about that bomb shelter, and I thought if I didn't do the dinosaur, I would have done something about the bomb
Right,
shelter.
and the bomb shelter, because it's sort of fascinating to me, because we have all these ideas about George O'Keeffe sort of in the popular culture, especially in New Mexico, where she's an icon here.
Right.
And it's all about her, like, simple, the light bulb hanging without a shade,
Spartan.
and her, very Spartan, and her dress, and her on the back of the motorcycle, and out there, this sort of minimalist, modernist aesthetic. But then you realize, seeing the bomb shelter, that she was also there during the Cold War and that time of fear of nuclear annihilation. And she bought some sort of bomb shelter kit and had it installed in a hillside.
And from my research, I looked at all the bomb shelters that were available at that time, and this, of course, was the best one. Mm-hmm. So when we were there, they were like, "Oh no, you can't even step in, right? It's dangerous." Later, I went to the archive and saw the photographs of inside. You could eat off the floor.
Oh, yeah.
It like had painted walls.
Well, yeah, because if there's the bomb, you're going to be in there for a while, and she's no slouch.
Well, and then it said also that this was only meant to last for 30 years. And it's still operational.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. I wish we would have been able to go into it because it looked like it hadn't been touched since they built it.
Right. So everyone listening to this, if the missiles are in the air, get on up to Abiquiu, find George O'Keeffe's old house there, and
a couple of beds for you.
Yeah. Hang out there for 30 years. I'm not sure the groceries are still in there.
Yeah, they've probably gone off.
Yeah. So we have a couple more minutes. Tell me more about the Riso
So the
project.
Riso thing that I decided to do was I had all these old items that I never really was able to share. And they're historical, it's money, it's different found items. And from this found items, I created this kind of narrative around the bomb shelter and around the Cold War. So it's not related to the dinosaur, but it's more of a spy thriller graphic novel. And it's just... Again, it encompasses more like found items, and every now and then you'll have to kind of look. It's embedded the text that you're meant to read.
Right. So, you were showing me, and there's like a plane ticket, and there's a lot of text, which is the original plane ticket Pan Am information. But then in one section, you've replaced it with text that is part of your woven story that goes through the imagery.
Precisely.
Yeah, it's great that way. And so you're making this will be a limited edition.
Limited edition. I believe they're printing 300. We're going to reserve about 50 for the artist, the organization, and for Reso. And then 250 are going to be given out at the opening. So that's the pull to go to the opening, is that you get this 40-page limited edition graphic novel.
Wow, that's great.
Maybe my only one. So
That's very generous.
head on out.
Thank you.
No, and it's all things that I wanted to share with people, just items that I was never they're like conversation pieces, but I never had a chance to really share them. So this is just a great opportunity to just get all those kind of things out there.
That's so great.
I'm a collector, so
Yeah,
I share my collection.
good to share those things.
Yeah, totally.
So we're out of time. It's been great. I'm just going to, before we go, re-mention that the opening where you can get the risograph graphic novel limited edition is at Axel Contemporary in the rail yard by the Farmers Market building in the shade structure from 5 to 7 p.m. on Friday, April 18th. And then we'll also be showing up at the Abiquiu Public Library on April 26th in the afternoon, like noon to 2. We'll be at Ghost Ranch in Abiquiu on May 3rd from 1:30 to 4:30. Is that the same day that that photographer, what's her name is?
Yes, Annie
Yeah.
Leibowitz is going to
Annie Leibowitz will be doing a thing there in the evening, so you can come up for the day, see our thing, and then see her thing. And then we'll be at New Mexico School for the Arts also in the beginning of May. So thanks so much.
Hey, thank you.
Jamison, Chase, thanks.
Thank you, Matthew Chase. Daniel.
All right.